thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. What exactly is going on at the moment? Because, of course, those 3 rockets that were, or ballistic missiles or whatever they were, that were sent into Iran, Israel has not said that it is taking responsibility for that necessarily, but a lot of the international community is saying, well, if it's not Israel, who is it? So just take us through the last couple of days and put it into context for us, if you would.
Well, thanks for having me on, Peter. And it really does warrant having a talk about it. After Iran launched an unprecedented barrage of, as you say, over 300 rockets into Israel, which was the first direct attack of Israel from Iran. We were waiting to see what kind of deterrence Israel would take, what action. And Israel's main pillar, one of its main strategic pillars, is deterrence. It's not revenge, and it's not escalation, it's deterrence so that such attacks wouldn't happen again. And here we can see with Iran that Iran has been threatening to annihilate Israel since 1979. Now, relations between Israel and Iran were excellent before the Islamic Revolution, and in 1979, the Israeli embassy was seized and handed over to the PLO. Since then, Iran has been threatening and attacking via proxies. And there was last week, as we saw, a direct attack. And so Israel, what we saw on Thursday night is that Israel managed to maintain its deterrence through kinetic action and through a coalition.
What does that mean? What does kinetic action mean?
So it's actual physical action, action that has been attributed to Israel. And Israel demonstrated that Iran lobbed over 300 rockets and didn't manage to get through defense systems, thanks to the coalition. And Israel was able to strike a handful of weapons into Iran and attack inside the heart of Iran, in Isfahan, and was able to, and as we saw in US reports overnight, they reported that the air defenses of the Natanz nuclear facility was hit. And so Israel was able to indicate that it can reach the soft belly of the Iranian defense infrastructure and its offensive infrastructure, while still keeping a coalition, which is really interesting.
And that is a fascinating point. And I wonder how much of this, I mean, we talked last weekend to some of our guests about Iran firing those 300 rockets, knowing that, listen, they knew that probably they'd be shot down by Israel. We had a remarkable coalition, including Jordan and Saudi Arabia, including RAF jets, our own RAF, who were helping shoot down those drones and those rockets. Very sadly, a 7-year-old girl was injured, but mass casualties were avoided. Everything that has happened since then seems to have avoided casualties as well. There has been damage, of course, but we've had 8 people apparently injured and 1 killed in Iraq. But in Iran and Israel, we seem to have avoided casualties. I wonder, Dr. Sofer, how much of this is that word performative? How much of that is just to show actually this is the tail end of the action between Iran and Israel, and whether it will now stop, do you think?
Well, I think, Peter, that the threat was real. I know, and I have colleagues and friends and family in Israel who were sitting in their shelters praying that the missiles will not fall. So,
oh, absolutely. I'm sure it was terrifying for so many people there, especially knowing they were coming for so many hours as well. I'm not minimizing that for a second, Dr. Sofer. I wouldn't do that.
Of course. No, of course. But I think what we see now is that the place to watch now, as you said, is the unprecedented coalition, where we had Sunni Arab states acting in concert with our own UK, with the United States, with France and others, to make sure that we also showed Iran that we have our coalition is strong. Our coalition will not tolerate the spread of instability around the region and around the world. And we also need to be mindful that Russia and China are also watching this.
Yes, indeed, that's absolutely true. I wonder, just turning to a slightly different part of this conflict that you will know well, I'm sure as well, is how soon we can expect an attack on Rafah, and how wise you think that is in terms of what Netanyahu will do next, perhaps turning his attentions from Iran to his backyard, really, in Gaza, and how to the plan, certainly in the humanitarian catastrophe, I'm sure that would happen as well if there was an invasion by Israel of Rafah.
Well, as you say, this is all part and parcel of one puzzle, because what's going on in Rafah is within the framework of Iranian proxy activity. Iran trains, funds Hamas, which is why we are in the Gaza war at the moment. And this is Hamas that it is preventing the end of the war. So Netanyahu now has to weigh up whether he'd be able to finish the war in a way, and it looks like going into Rafah is part of that strategic calculus, reluctantly, and I have no doubt that the IDF will be making sure that there is minimal humanitarian knock-on effect, because the IDF is very much holds that into account. And of course,
although we've seen Hamas this morning, obviously it's the Hamas-run health ministry. They are terrorists, and I don't trust their figures. But what we do know is there has been a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. They're saying 34,000 people now have died. They never tell us how many of those are terrorists, for example. They never tell us how many of those are innocent people. But certainly, if Rafah happens, there will be innocent civilians losing life. This is a war situation, and that's kind of priced in, isn't it?
Well, Hamas themselves issued a correction of those figures about a week ago, and minimized those numbers. Of course, any loss of life is regrettable, but this is a war situation. And of course, there are 133 hostages still being held
yes, absolutely.
in Gaza. And so I think everyone is working towards finding a resolution to this and minimizing. There have been endless convoys of water and aid and food going into Gaza, and that effort continues, because any suffering is very regrettable.
Of course. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Efrat Sofer, who's an Iran expert and board chair of the Esri Center for Research for Iran and Gulf States. Appreciate you joining me this morning.